What I'm saying should not be misunderstood. And what I've said should be underscored, which is that the political movement, the freedom movement, the African freedom movement, in any of its aspects, in any of the countries, has needed and has always been uh, a result of collective efforts of many people participating. Even the establishment of MMD, uh, it may have started with individuals, but ultimately it could not take off without a critical mass of different personalities. The idea itself of opposing the one party state actually predates independence, because even before independence, there were some African freedom fighters who were advocating for Zambia to become a one party state when it became independent. Uh, the official position of the top leadership, at least of the United National Independence Party, UNIP, was not opposed to a one party state, but was to express a preference that if there was to be a one party state, it should be established through a ballot box, through elections that resulted in their party winning all the seats in parliament. Uh, there was already a model in Tanzania where almost the Tanganyika African National Union almost won all the seats except for one or two. So the position was to say that they did not want to impose a one-party state. And Zambia got into independence in a independence dispensation that provided for a multi-party constitution. This was the negotiated position, agreed position by all the stakeholders who negotiated the independence. So Zambia became independent under one-party regime. The results of the first post-election elections, however, was such that it made it clear that if there were people who dreamed that there would be a day in Zambia when one party, UNIP, would win all the seats in parliament, that day looked to be far-fetched, because in the results of the 68 election, although UNIP maintained a majority in parliament, it was a majority that it gained through having 30 of the 75 seats in the 68 election unopposed. And the phenomenon of having 30 seats unopposed was not a free choice. It was a result of intimidation and the physical prevention of opposition party candidates in some areas in northern province, in Luapula particularly, very successfully being prevented from submitting their nomination. So that although the UNIP had a majority in parliament, it was quite clear that that majority did not come out of the free will of Zambian voters. Secondly, the results of 68 indicated that the opposition party, the minority party, the African National Congress, rather than diminish after independence, actually gained strength after independence and was able to have a sizable number of seats. In fact, won all the seats in Southern Province and almost all the seats in Barosi Province at the time. So that in the face of this result, as well as the divisions that were beginning to show cracks within UNIP leadership, it became quite clear that the dream of attaining a one-party state by the free will of Zambians would not be realized. So after the 1968 election, it became unique policy to begin to facilitate for a one-party state outside the straightforward ballot box. And this was engineered through the deceitful 1968 referendum, whose result licensed the ruling party to be able to change the constitution as they please using the majority in parliament. And it's through this majority in parliament that in 1972, by imposition of a cabinet decision, Zambia had a one-party state imposed on it, which started operating in 1973. So that even before independence, there were people against the one-party state in anticipation that UNIP secretly desired a one-party state. Even during the 72 Constitutional Commission, which went around under the chairmanship of Mr. Mayenza Chona to seek Zambians' opinion, not on whether or not they want a one-party state, but simply on the limited terms of reference of determining what sort of one-party state they want. Even there was also opposition, and it was clearly illustrated by the fact that the leaders of the African National Congress, which had teamed up with the United Party, the leaders, Mr. Haring Kumbula and Mr. Mundia, actually went to court to oppose the imposition of the one-party state. Furthermore, when appointed to the one-party state commission, they refused to participate in protest. So the opposition to the one-party state was there also from the very beginning of the one-party state. And throughout the period of the one-party state, there were voices of opposition and activities of opposition. Indeed, there was even a military coup attempt against the one-party state at the end of the 1980s, which led into the 10-year imprisonment of Mr. Shamwana, Mr. Msakanya, Goodwin Mumba, Mundia Skatana, and a number of other people. And I should also say that in 1973 itself, after the one-party state was imposed, there was actually an armed group, and which ultimately came under Mr. Mshala, which was formed precisely to fight the one-party state. Some of the people who were in that group, but who had been arrested earlier in 1973, like Mr. Kalimbwe, Timothy Kalimbwe, a man from Mungu, but who was resident in Livingstone, and who was a United Party official in Livingstone, was arrested in 1973 and stayed in prison up to 1990, when they were released together with the others. So that the opposition to the one-party state did not begin with us in 1990, but in fact had always been there in various forms. Mr. Timothy Kalimbwe, I think history must record it fairly. He served longer in Zambian prison as a political prisoner than any other political prisoners, even in the colonial days, and up to date. Maybe the ones that will match the length of political imprisonment in Zambia like him would be the present 3 Barosi nationals who are in prison serving 10-year sentences after that. So I want to make a point that we were not starting the struggle afresh, but we were starting it in a different way. The difference we made is that we chose the method that was open and non-conspirator, and we chose the method of coming openly to a conference at Garden House Hotel and discuss the multi-party option and organize towards the campaign to bring back multi-party openly without no, I won't say without fear, because of course there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of intimidation, but with courage that was overcome. Furthermore, I've already referred to the National Convention in March 1990, the results of which made it clear to some of us that the option of democratizing Zambia or reintroducing multi-party in Zambia within or through UNIP, that door was closed, and therefore we started organizing for the Garden, what turned out to be the Garden Hotel meeting. I should say that even at that conference, several people presented papers and made statements in favor of returning Zambia to multi-party, or in favor of UNIP reforming itself sufficiently as to create a free democratic space for the citizens. Some of the people who presented paper are Mr. Scottawina, Mr. Sulo, and Vernon Mwanga, Alexander Chikwanda, and myself, actually. I also presented a paper at that place. I went there as head of a delegation of the Economic Commission, the Economic Association of Zambia. In my delegation, there were other people such as Mbita Chitala, Dr. Moses Banda, and 2 or 3 other people represented. But our plea for UNIP to redeem itself and take a lead in reforming itself and leading Zambia into a reform that returns us to multi-party were crushed. UNIP kind of failed. I mentioned that to indicate that indeed the movement itself was not a one-man show or one-person show at all whatsoever. So after that conference, I committed myself to organize. At that time, I was general manager of Blackwood Hodge. I actually went on paid terminal leave in order to free myself to be able to be full-time on this campaign. One of my early ventures was that I sought to meet with Mr. Vernon Mwanga and Mr. Alexander Chikwanda, who obviously were already well known, and they had presented papers which to me showed that they were reformers. So I wanted to engage them in the possibility of joining forces towards